The other day I was talking about the black Indians and the Creek Negroes, okay, which means the black Indians are the biracial or the dual heritage ones, while the Creek Negroes had no indigenous blood, but they were adopted into the Creek, okay? You can watch the stitch video on that if you need background. But this happened in the 1800s and early 1900s. Even with the Cherokee, you will find that on the Dawes rolls that there are African Americans listed on the Dawes rolls that have no indigenous blood, and that's because they were enslaved by the Cherokee Nation, and there was a treaty that was signed that gave them land. Now, they fought over this in the 1800s, and I'm going to show you where they fought over this, because African Americans were defending the land they were given, because they knew they had been adopted into the nation and they were given that land. And the Cherokee and the African Americans were fighting at that point. So I'm going to show you that news clipping. The latest news from the seat of trouble between the Negro, they call them intruders, and the Cherokee citizens is that the Negroes are still holding the fort at Gooseneck Bend at the muzzle of Winchester rifles and brass cannon. So the Negroes, it says, had organized a company of 190 men, all armed with Winchesters. Okay? One squad of Negroes possesses a brass cannon which is ready to use and will be turned upon any attacking party. It's believed that the Cherokee government will call for volunteers and fight the intruders to a finish. Warrants were issued today by Muskogee courts for the arrest of the rioters, but it's feared that the court's officers are too few to effect the arrest. If you read on down, it says the sheriff was met by 190 armed men and he retired. The Negroes claim to be adopted citizens. A few of them are such and have had possession of the lands for some years. But the majority of the Negroes are late intruders from Texas, Kansas, and Nebraska. So this is why there's a lot of confusion today online, especially on TikTok, when it comes to the Dawes rolls and people seeing their names there and believing that they have indigenous blood, and some of them do and some of them don't. It just all depends on the individual and their family, because there are dual heritage or biracial people. At that time there were, and there are still some today. However, that's not with all of them. Some of them were, like I said, adopted through treaties, and they would do that through giving them land. So that's how that goes. And apparently in 1891, they were trying to reclaim the land, and that ended up a big old war, because black people weren't ready to give up that land, because they were at that time Cherokee, because they were already adopted into the nation. Okay. Now that happened in 1891, but in 1866, there was a treaty signed by the U.S. government, to which the Cherokee government gave citizenship to people with African blood living in Cherokee nations. So that's that. And so now you see why there's a lot of stuff going on TikTok with this discussion, because there are some people with a lineage of both that came from a grandparent that was dual heritage, and then there are some who were adopted into the nation with no bloodline. Okay, so that's what's going on. And this happened around the United States of America. It just all depends on what it was and why. But go back and look at the other video.